Yo everybody, what's going on? This is Keegan from Kman Reviews bringing you the next episode of Review Recall. This, of course, is for the albums that came out in April of 2021. There are definitely some exceptions, again, later on in the month that I did not quite get to, but those will be tackled next month. There's only about a couple, but just figured I'd mention that anyway. Got quite a few here on the docket, so let's not waste any more time, because this is going to be long enough as it is. Let's dive in. So this is another album from the Frontiers music label and their whole 80s rock and metal shtick that I'm always happy to listen to. And this is the debut album from this Brazilian group, and yet again it's another great release. Masterful performances by the band, and lead vocalist Rafael Mendes harnesses a bunch of different styles in his vocals, from Iron Maiden, Dio, Rainbow, and even some Judas Priest in spots. It's another quality album. Go give it some love. You know, it's good. I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but I don't mean to sound rude, but why is this getting so much praise? A lot of the instrumentals here feel overly polished and clean, much like a lot of the modern country scene, a genre that I'm not too fond of naturally. Plus, some of the lyrics dive way too deep into traditional cliches. Maybe it's just not my thing and this is actually something that's like groundbreaking, but frankly, I just don't see the appeal. Now, the YouTube rap scene can be extremely polarizing. A lot of the time people tend to point out that it's just a bunch of guys, predominantly whites with a major Eminem or NF complex, trying to A, rap fast, B, try their hand at singing, or C, slam other rappers. And I know a lot of people don't tend to care for that style too much, but I never really got sick of it. I still tend to enjoy guys like NF, Quadeca, who will appear later in this video, and Crypt here, who might just be one of my favorites out of this YouTube scene. Sure, his singing is a little bit flat, and there are definitely some duds on here, no doubt, mainly the track Like Me. But the guy can flow his ass off, and he has a guttural, angry voice. He's an engaging songwriter. The dude is talented, no doubt. Displayed on this album in highlights Voicemail, I Don't Wanna, and the single Bad Friend. Personally, I just think this genre gets a bad rep from the stereotypes and the names associated. I'll continue to stick by it and this album. So I was inclined to check this out because of the name associated, and if Johnny Graves doesn't sound familiar, it should, because that's Rouger. I reviewed his album a few months back, so this was his debut as a producer for Jineya's debut EP here, and this is pretty good. Jineya's got a very sultry voice, suiting the more moody pop production very well. Quite a few bangers that stand out here too. I think this is great. Give it a listen. There's some decent tracks on this new KALEO record here. I love the vocals and how passionate and emotional they come off. But as a whole, this is just more of the same that they were doing on AB. Not much is done here to change the formula. Still mostly just some folky, bluesy, acoustic pop with some rockier edges here and there to spice things up. But overall, nothing special. Conway certainly doesn't do much to switch things up here, but personally, I don't think he really needed to. He does his thing well on this tight, concise 40-minute project, and it's engaging all the way throughout. Not to mention the features on here: 2 Chainz, Ludacris, Jid, and fellow Griselda members Benny and Westside Gunn on the closer, while being assisted with a unique and diverse set of beats here. This is no doubt worth your time. Not too big of a country person normally. Something in a record like this really needs to pop and stand out for me to enjoy modern country. And this is that record. Might just be a sign of the times here with the pandemic and all, but a lot of the reflective messages here really hit home in a different way. Plus, the features from his children add this unexpected emotional gut punch. This is a great record. I think it's one worth listening to. It's incredible how an album with 22 tracks can sound like pure and utter nothing. But Moneybagg Yo did it, so good on him, I guess. I've had my issues with Julia Michaels now for a good couple of years. I never liked her style of singing. I never liked her songwriting all that much either. Her production has always just been okay. And that's the only thing tethering me to keep checking out her stuff, so naturally my morbid curiosity got the better of me and led me to check out her debut album here. And again, it's fine, but with how thin and admittedly one note a lot of this feels, it's hard to see Julia reaching superstardom like I think she's trying to achieve. Maybe I'm just out of the loop again, I guess, but she's not doing much for me here at all. It's good. I mean, there's not a bad track on here, and I like the meaningful statements regarding racial and societal issues. Vic's delivery is still sharp, the beats are nice. It's certainly not his best, I just think V-Tape is better on all fronts, but this was still good. So this is the debut album from the progressive metal band from Nashville, mainly fronted by one fellow YouTuber, Mr. Mike from Become the Night, and I think this was a very solid debut. The transitions especially, they felt so effortless and clean. Not a perfect album, some of it did kind of drone a little bit in my opinion, but there's a lot of grandiosity here that's certainly commendable. Pretty good debut if you're into that sort of metal. So I'm fairly new to the whole Tune Yards train, and it certainly took me a minute to immerse myself in this record with all the hectic instrumentation going on here. But after a while, I found a good amount to like here, mainly in the rhythms and the harmonies, but also in Meryl's vocals and how expansive they get here. Maybe this was a bad jumping on point, again, I'm still very out of the loop, but this only makes me want to fully dive in. Pretty decent stuff. Oh, it is so bloated. It is overly bloated as a matter of fact. 75 minutes is way too long to keep an album like this interesting. Plus, there was a deluxe edition literally like a week later that added 8 extra songs to that record. And who asked for it? Seriously, who asked for it? Because whoever did, I need to give a very stern talking to. Well, this was a lot more classic and rough and riff-happy than I was expecting. Very new to this band, but I really love the inspiration from a bunch of the 70s titans, Aerosmith, AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, that whole scene. Even the lead vocalist has quite the howl. I can't help but get the feeling this may usher in a similar response that Greta Van Fleet did a couple years back. I mean, if this even reaches that level of popularity, but regardless, I still enjoy this type of music. It's a fairly good EP, notably darker than his other material, diving into the more heavy elements of love and self-worth, and it all leaves a pretty lasting impact despite only being 4 tracks long. Gojira, more like go into my playlist because this album's really good. Why do I have subscribers? While sure, both of these artists have very strong chemistry together, that's undeniable and demonstrated here in spades, but 20 tracks, over an hour long. I mean, I just got so bored after track 12, and there wasn't much in the previous tracks to justify me returning to this for a while. Well, this certainly was a unique pop album, really catering to Charlotte's talent at understating these insecurities she describes, letting them simmer over these quiet beats, and it's so captivating to listen to it, whether it's about said insecurities or self-growth, heartbreak, vulnerability, or freedom, alluding to the album's title. Very fitting touch, by the way. Plus, there are also some nice bops on here, too. What an album. I enjoy this a lot. The intro track was pretty good. I thought this was alright. Nothing here that really blew me away, but I did like the narrative here about falling for a friend. But as a whole, it is pretty sugary sweet. A little bit too much for my liking as one whole listen. Don't get me wrong, there were some great tracks on here, but I'm probably not going to return to this for a minute. I mean, I almost feel like I need to brush my teeth to make sure I don't develop cavities. No way. No way. No way. I was pretty worried about this album going in, being a full 19 tracks and less than an hour long. But to my surprise, this was actually pretty good. Brutally open and confrontational, self-accepting, and the whole album just kind of serves as a bit of a conceptual piece, starting off at rock bottom and clawing her way out as the album progresses, sharing her experience along the way, while delivering some fairly infectious bops on the side. This was good. I liked it. Wow. I mean, I was very impressed with this one. Even 40 years into their career, the band still barely sounds like they've aged. It's fresh, it's well done, it's a marvelous album that shows the band has no signs of slowing down. Easily Quadeka's best work to date in my opinion, and a lot of that comes in the form of the eclectic and unique instrumentation here. It's certainly memorable, although I do think that there's not enough done here vocally. He has a good flow, no doubt, but his range is just not quite there yet, and kind of turns some of these tracks a little bit boring. But he's been going up, and I'm really looking forward to what he's coming up with next. So apparently a good handful of the stuff was meant to be for an unreleased System of a Down album, while the rest seems to be the reason why there hasn't been a new System of a Down album. And this only makes me want more System of a Down. It's good. I picked this band solely because I thought the band name was pretty funny, but instead, what I got was this chaotic fusion of rock and jazz with varying pitch shifts, tempo changes, and the whole thing just really reminded me of Frank Zappa in that a lot of the songs feel much more like experiments and jam sessions loaded with improvisation, and some songs just even having nonsense syllables and gibberish. But there's definitely still a clear sense of musicianship here. This is certainly a subjective album, like I really can't describe this that well. If anything I've said here even remotely interests you, I encourage you to give this a shot because, my god, this was a trip. Futuristic's more recent years have been pretty rocky, to say the least, but I do think he rebounded in 2020 with two incredible albums, one of which, Futuristic, actually made my top albums list in the form of an honorable mention. And yeah, you know what, this one might do it too, even to the full list. This is an incredible album. Futuristic and Michael Manelli work so well together. It reminds me a lot of when Devon Terrell did a collab album with Futuristic Coast to Coast, a personal favorite album of mine, period. And while some moments here have a little bit of a weaker punch, a lot of this was enjoyable. Check this out. Wow, talk about a sunny record. Certainly the sunniest the band has released, but it's also not a record that demands your attention. It can certainly work as some easy listening here, but if you give this album your full attention, this is stellar. I mean, it's not bad at all. There were certainly some good instrumentals here and some engaging melancholic storytelling, but I just think Ali's vocals really hold this back from reaching peak pop R&B, especially when he gets into a bit of a higher register. Very prominent on earlier tracks. I'll probably return to a couple of these, but not the full thing. So I'll be honest, I feared the worst going into this. Not because the band name or the album cover, not like genuine fear or anything, but more so the genre of music and how music like this has a very dedicated fan base and how I'm naturally out of the loop with music like this. I figured to start diving into music like this with this album. And what I can say about this is that the instrumentals are incredible. I never had an issue with fast BPM, uber aggro drums, or guitar onslaughts. Those are all okay to me, and this was like perfect level for me. My biggest gripe with music like this is normally vocals. I just tend to like to be able to understand what I'm listening to, so these deep, throaty growls do absolutely nothing for me. But here, I mean, I thought it was surprisingly tolerable. I have definitely heard worse. And frankly, that's kind of what I was expecting going into this. I was expecting the worst, but no, this is pretty alright. I can actually make out some occasional words here, like every second line or something. And when the band suddenly slows things down, it's just so grimy and disgusting. I kind of love it. For an introduction to band and music like this as a whole, I was surprised. Not too shabby at all. Why is this so good? Why is this so good? It's not the best thing I've heard, but it's so damn consistent. The hooks are great. Their voices are so unique and memorable and captivating. I genuinely can't wait for what's next. There were some good songs on here, especially on earlier moments like Calling My Phone, but my god was this just such an okay listen in full. Repetitive instrumentals, and just way too many tracks to warrant returning to this whole album. The bangers are still pretty solid out of the context of this record, though. It's been a while since I last heard Royal Blood, and my first introduction to them was their 2017 album How Did This Get So Dark, an album I enjoyed thoroughly. And I think this album actually topped it. A little bit lighter of an album here, also a bit more groovy and euphoric as a result. I can understand how this may be a divisive record in the band's catalog, but for me, the fantastic blend of harder rock with the adventurous, danceable stylings of pop was just pure ear candy to me. I enjoyed this for what it was, which is just some eerie, smooth house beats plus repetitive vocal snippets surgically spliced together, but I can admire this album for being so intimate, powerful, and really portraying this joyous optimism in terms of global pain and hardship. Best thing he's done since Lowboat 2, but honestly that's not really saying much. This is the debut album from indie rock upcomer Briston Maroney, and I was blown away by this album. I especially connected with these lyrics about grappling with life, but it's painted so vividly and beautifully. Not to mention the mostly upbeat production throughout this album, but with the underlying tone, that's something maybe a bit off, which that feeling gets demonstrated in Briston's vocals, which are stellar. I highly recommend checking this album out. Worth a listen. Okay, look, Saweetie is a great MC. Talented rapper, great presence, displayed here on this little EP. But my god, the features here don't measure up at all. Although if I can take away at least one thing positive from this, that debut album, Pretty Bitch Music, is gonna be great. No doubt. Okay, so I only heard the two main albums, the Heart and Soul sections. That Ampersand and album was only available to his fanbase on his website, so we just have the two main courses here. Heart is good, very conservative, traditional, rootsy country, pretty inoffensive, and again, mostly good. Soul is a lot more experimental, much more bluesy as well, even disco touches are here, and I think it lands more often than it flops. I think Soul's the better of the two. Alright, Corday. Alright, listen to me, okay? Your debut album was good. Your debut album was fantastic. This little EP here is also fantastic. Get the album done. Get that out to us. We are ravenous at this point. At least I am. I'm ravenous for that album. This one is going to be so damn good. Album of the year maybe, but I am ready for it. Yes. My two favorite things in music. Celtic rock and punk flavorings. New one from the artist formerly known as Dram, his first in 5 years, and I enjoyed this album quite a bit. A little bit of a revitalization of the R&B that helped to develop his core fanbase. It's very smooth, it's feel-good, and certainly soulful. I really like this album, personally. It's short, it's sweet, it's certainly easy to get swept up in the grooves here, although some of the tracks here can really drag on after a bit, but I still had a positive experience with this. The good old sounds of G-Funk. Not to mention being released on 420, what's not to love? Alright, that closes off this episode of Review Recall. Thank you for making it this far if you are here. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy what you see. And I will be sure to catch you guys in the next one. Peace.